Hi everyone, I'm back today to do the third instalment of our new adventure, which is Lost in Time, a Mr Fogherty colouring book by RJ Hampson. And this particular page is called Presentation. It's set in the present day. Mr Fogherty explains his invention to a group of sceptical friends. And I really like this page here because obviously Snail's heard it all before and has gone to sleep with boredom. So I'm just going to try and get situated as best I can. Let's see if we can get as close as we can so that you can see the whole page. And today I'm going to colour with Crayola pencils. Now, I recently asked between Polychromos Prismacolor and Crayola pencils what people would like to see as a colour along. And Polychromos was the one in front, closely followed by Prismacolor, but there was still quite a good demand or response for Crayola. So I'm going to use Crayola because there are so many colour alongs already with Prismacolor in, and I will use Prismacolor in the book at some stage. But I know that there are a few of you who are like me and might be budget minded. And I want to show what we can do with the humble Crayola pencil. This is just the ordinary pencils that you might buy for your children or grandchildren. And I have the 100-piece set. It's currently on sale at the moment for $30 on Amazon Australia. So $30 Australian for 100 pencils is pretty good going. And as you can see, I do have some small ones here that I have used quite a bit. I have one pencil that refuses to sharpen well, and it is a bit off center, but it's not really bad. But it does not sharpen well and it breaks all the time, and it's such a shame because it's called Tropical Rainforest and it's a really lovely green. So anyway, out of 100 I had one that did that. I think that's pretty good going when you think of the price. It's pretty good quality. So I have in this particular pencil case the 100 set. I also have the Colours of Kindness set, which I think off of the top of my head it was 6 extra colours. And also I have the Crayola Colours of the World skin tone set in here as well. So as you can see, I've got a few too many for the pencil case, but I've squeezed them in. And I do have a couple of colours that are duplicates because I think the Colours of Kindness set, here you go, here's one out of Colours of Kindness, had Granny Smith apple, and I think Granny Smith was in the 100 set as well. So that's what I've got here. So I think that's about 130 colours maybe all up, because I think there was 24 in the Colours of the World and about 6 in the Colours of Kindness, so maybe 125 colours. I'm not sure. Sorry, 129 colours. I'm not entirely sure, but let's just say a little bit over 100. So I'm going to get started, and I want to show you what you can do with Crayola pencils. And I've got some backing paper in there because I do tend to press a bit harder with the Crayola. They are a hard pencil. I've tried to sharpen most of these off of camera. We'll see how I go. I might need to resharpen. So as per usual, I'm going to start with Mr Fogherty, and I'm going to start with jade green for him. And this one isn't particularly over sharpened. It's got a blunt end. But like the Polychromos, Crayola is definitely very much something that you will need to layer. And if you remember that and don't press too hard too soon, depending on your paper, of course, you will start to build some colour up. And I'm going to use olive. And you can see that this is getting really small now. I'm very tempted to buy another set at $30. I'm tempted to buy a replacement set, and I can just take colours from that as these ones start to wear down. So I'll talk about why I like Crayola pencils or cheaper pencils in general, and when I remember I'll try and tell you what I'm doing as well, although it's very similar to what happened in the previous page with the polychromos if you watched that one. So again, I will leave my colours off to the side as I've used them, just so I can keep track of what I'm using. And now I'm going to use green. So this is much more, they were very yellowy greens. This is more of a true green. And I'm just using that to go around the edges and anywhere where it might be in shadow. So I like to use budget supplies, and in particular budget pencils, because I've explained in the past that I am quite frugal by nature, in the sense that I do buy things when I want them, but I try to never overpay for things. So if I can wait and get something on sale, I try to do that, because I begrudge paying, you know, 50, when it comes to pencils, it could be 50 or up to $100 extra, because I'm impatient, when inevitably these things will come on sale at some time. And I just, you know, it irks me to pay more for things than I need to. So that's one thing. And then with these cheaper budget priced pencils especially, but all art supplies, whether it be markers, paints, whatever, when they're lower priced like this, I actually am much more experimental. So when it comes to my polychromos, I'm just going to put a, sorry for jumping around here, but I'm just going to put a paper towel down, because I actually did put some hand cream and stuff on earlier, and I don't want the page to get a bit greasy, and I'm a little bit hot. So when it comes to polychromos, because I've spent so much money on them and they're an artist grade product, there's something in me that says I can't waste them. You know, I have to be prudent in how I use them, and use them on the really good paper and the books that I really like, rather than blowing through them, you know, willy-nilly, because they're too expensive to replace. And it's a little bit silly, because, you know, when it comes down to it, I am fortunate enough to be able to buy things when I want them, and they are readily available, and I would be able to replace them. But that's just a, you know, a belief that I've developed growing up that stayed with me. But when it comes to something like these Crayola pencils, knowing that, you know, for $30 I can replace this whole set if I want to, it allows me to be much more experimental. It allows me to really go to town just playing with them, and I have absolutely no fear of wasting them, and it frees me up an awful lot, and I enjoy, you know, I enjoy colouring with them. Now, there are some papers that are absolutely awful, you know, to work with Crayolas on, but there are also some papers that are absolutely awful to work on with the expensive pencils too. I'm going to use a medium deep golden here. This is from Colours of the World, and I'm going to do his jacket. So it just allows me to colour with a little bit more freedom. And I know that, you know, the expensive pencils, artist grade pencils, some of them can be much easier to work with, and I don't argue with that. I don't deny that. Some of them are absolutely beautiful to work with. But by the same token, I'm not actually lying when I say that on some paper, the Crayola can be just as easy to work with. And there's 100 plus colours. So it's a decent range of colour, especially if you're starting out. And if you're starting out and you don't know whether you even like pencil, it could be, a half decent starting point for you. And with Crayola pencils, at $30, if I don't like them, I could have donated them to a child or a school or whatever, and I would have absolutely no hesitation in doing that, because there'd be no sense of guilt at all. So now I'm going to use Cocoa, which is just the regular set, and I'm going to use the Cocoa in the areas that are a bit more shaded. So, underneath his coat lapel, for example. And granted, you will, on some paper, have to work harder to get a payout with the Crayola. But that in itself isn't enough to stop me using them. And they can be really good used over the top of a watercolour base or a marker base, for example, and building the colour up like, I've talked about on so many videos. So that lighter colour was the medium deep golden. So now I might just look for a lighter one in that shade. That's the medium golden. And I'm just going to use that as I get towards the top of the sleeve where it will be lighter. And just leave a little tiny bit of white showing. And then I'm going to use that now to blend the Cocoa and the medium deep golden together. Again, leaving a little tiny bit of white paper showing, just to allow me to keep that highlight if I want to. But later, if I decide I don't want that highlight, it will be easy enough just to blend that in. So it's definitely more time consuming in one sense with the Crayola, because they do need to be layered. But you can indeed layer quite a bit with them. The trick is just not to press too hard too soon, or you just won't add any extra colour in there. So I felt like doing another pencil page today. I haven't coloured it all over the weekend. I had a bit of a lazy weekend on Saturday, but then Sunday I spent half the day in the garden doing some work in the garden, and then last night I was just, I just didn't have the energy to concentrate too much on colouring. Most evenings I would colour, but not last night. And I can only do these videos really through the daytime for you, because the lighting won't be good enough to record at night. So it's going to limit what I can do for recording for a while. So that's with 3 colours there. You can see that there's a bit of a range that's been achieved just with those 3 colours. And then I could bring in something like a dark brown and still build up more colour. So if you don't work too heavily too soon and destroy the tooth of the paper, Crayola pencils can in fact build up quite a bit of colour, I feel. It might need a bit more patience. If you've got hand pain, like you have arthritis or anything that gives you hand pain, you might find that the Crayola will not be for you. They can be a little bit harder on your hands. And I might actually give him a dark brown hat this time. Quite often I go for a dark grey or a black sort of top hat look, but I think I might go for the dark brown this time. I don't intend to have every page looking identical with his clothing if he's wearing the same clothing, because it's just a bit boring for me to keep colouring the same thing, and I don't keep good records, so I'm not into, you know, checking up what I've used. And I think, you know, flicking through the book, it might be nice for continuity's sake. Continuity? That's not a right word, is it? You know what I mean, anyway. For the sake of it looking, you know, like it's a story that's following on, that would look nice, but it's going to be boring for me to create. So, and not that many people will be looking at this book again once I've completed it anyway. You know, it will go in my bookcase. So I've just used that dark brown to get that first layer down. Then I'm going to use the cocoa again, I think, to blend that out a little bit. And you can just use one colour, varying the pressure to get lighter to darker. But I find that a little bit, you know, boring to look at. So I like to add the extra shades in just to make it look a little bit more interesting. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who gave me feedback on the last video that I put up, and I talked about are people watching to the end and so on. That's been really useful to hear your feedback. And also those of you that gave me feedback about whether you're using the you know, the listing of colours and so on, that's been really helpful, so thank you very much. And also thank you for the lovely comments and the support that you've all been giving me with recent videos. It is really very much appreciated. And I also need to say thank you to Russell, RJ Hampson, for mentioning me in his colour along that he did of, which page was it now? Hamlet, the Hamlet page. I really do appreciate that as well. Thank you, Russell, for giving me a bit of a shout out there, talking about the series. So, very much appreciated. So the support is really, really nice to hear. I'm glad that people are enjoying it. I'm just so pleased when people let me know that they're actually learning things. They're not necessarily colouring the same page, or they might not even be using a Crayola pencil, but they're getting useful information from the videos that they're taking to other materials and other books. So that's really all I aim to do, is give you some information that you can use that might help inspire you in other ways. And I never really want to see anybody do exactly the same as what I'm doing. That's not my goal for these little colour alongs and explaining everything. This one is brick red, by the way. The main goal for me really is to inspire you. If just something that I say or do that's a little bit different from anything else that you've seen, and I'm just going to put a touch of that into his jacket just to tie in the various elements. You know, if it's just something a little bit different to what you have seen before or normally watch, and it just helps you feel inspired to try something different, or indeed just get the courage to work in books. So many of you tell me that you've got a book and you know, you've been too nervous to work in it, and I feel that that's such a shame. So if I can encourage you to start working in other books, or any of your books, I'm really happy about that. Right, so that brick red, I'm also going to use that as the base for this chair, great chair that he's got on his time machine. I've actually got a couple of wingback chairs myself. Mine are maybe not as fancy as this, mine are from IKEA. But I do like the look of a wingback chair, I have to say. So I'm quite impressed at his style that he's got here on his time machine. So again, starting out, not pressing too hard because we don't want to fill that tooth up too soon. It's really important with a hard pencil like the Crayola, because you might not be getting quite a quick payoff with pigment with the Crayola like you do with the polychromos. So therefore, part of you says, press harder, you need more colour. But if you go slowly, you will get a decent payoff with your colour in the end. So I felt like doing another slow, relaxed video, because a few of you have also mentioned that you are enjoying the more relaxed pace. You know, if you're new to colouring as well, you don't necessarily want to do all the bells and whistles just yet, or not feel confident enough to do that. So I think that's the arm of the chair there, isn't it? So it's good to remember that sometimes. I get a little bit sucked into, with YouTube and social media, you need to keep creating new things and uploading to stay visible in the algorithm. And if you don't post regularly or upload regularly and people aren't watching you, you tend to slip behind on the radar, and you don't necessarily get, you know, the audience that you're hoping for. And let's face it, I'm not just making these videos just for my own enjoyment. I am hoping that people are going to actually watch them and see them, because there's absolutely no point me doing it if there isn't. So you get into this little cycle where you think, you know, I must be doing this, I must do something, because I'm going to, you know, fall behind, and it's just going to get harder and harder for people to see my videos, and so on and so on. And so let's go with maroon now, M-A-R-O-O-N, in case I'm pronouncing that in a way you don't recognise, but I never know whether it's maroon or maroon. And I'm just going to start to darken up some of these areas where there might be that little bit of shade or shadow. and start to define some of the details. And yeah, some of you have been commenting about, you know, you like the slower pace and finding it more relaxing and so on, and it has been something that I've been thinking about for a little while, because you do get sucked into the, you know, the whole thing of, you know, are people watching, what are they liking, what do they want, versus what do you want to do. You know, because you tell yourself, oh, if I do what I want to do, if I do what I, you know, make what I want, then the right people will find me. Well, not necessarily. That doesn't always happen. So let's go back to the brick red now and start to build up a little bit more of the brick red. So light layers, not pressing all that hard at all here. I'll save that until I'm absolutely certain that that's what I want, and I want to start getting that deepness of colour and, you know, potentially fill in all these little white bits that are showing through. And I'll just say, it doesn't matter if those white bits sorry, words are hard. It doesn't matter if those little white bits show through either. That's entirely up to you to decide whether you like that or you don't. So yes, it got me thinking a little bit about, well, what do I like to watch, and what was I hoping when I started this channel? Get back to, you know, the roots of what I wanted to achieve. And it is very important to me that colouring be relaxing. As for so many people these days, I do get a little bit anxious, have trouble with anxiety at times. And, you know, colouring is meant to be my happy place. It's meant to be my relaxation time and my enjoyment time. It's not meant to feel pressured. Okay, so I might leave that for now, and once I come back and the picture is more resolved, I can start, you know, strengthening up any details that are really important there. Now, on the previous page, I said that I wanted, or I thought that this, you know, should be metal and therefore grey. So I will keep it grey for this one. But that's not to say it's always going to be grey. Just had a look through the viewfinder then to make sure that the colour is okay, because the camera does keep changing the lighting quite a bit when you move around. So let's see, I will start with Timberwolf, which is a lightish grey, and then I'll start to build up some darker colour on top of it. So again, not too hard. I don't know how well that's going to be showing through because I can't see my camera viewfinder unless I actually stand up to have a look in it. So, you know, sometimes I don't notice some of these things until I'm editing, but hopefully that is showing up in some shape, but you will see it as we progress along. And I think that this bit here should be metal as well. And this looks very much like the light shade on the previous page, which I haven't studied each page ahead of time. What I like to do is just sit down with the page and interpret it as I go. And I've just realised I've left the arm of the chair there. So that's the brick red that I'm using again. So yeah, I tend to, I think all of that might be chrome or metal of some description, so I'm going to put grey on there for now. I don't plan things, and I don't look ahead and think, okay, the plan for the book is going to be this. When I start to do that, it sucks all the joy out of it for me, and it becomes like, it feels like it's a job, and it's not fun for me anymore. So this first layer, I'm not too fussy about whether there's lines, marks, whether it's finely blended, especially a light colour like this, because there's going to be other colours going on top of it. So I colour a bit haphazardly when it's these early stages. Not sure what to do those yet. Not sure what to do the tank yet. I might do this bit up here grey. So what I, pardon me, what I try to do is keep it all very spontaneous. Because when I start to plan things out too much, or even like when it comes to the channel, if I think ahead of time, and you know, what am I trying to achieve, and what do I want, and so on, I find that I get it, not a sense of, it's not anxiety, but I do get a little bit edgy about it. And that's why I'm sort of trying to keep things very casual, very laid back, very slow. Because that's become my whole ethos really for general day-to-day life. And I'm not trying to be anything different here on the channel. You know, so hearing that that resonates with some of you is a bit of a relief. And you can go, you know, all in and do as detailed and as extravagant and whatever you want to do with your pages. That's, you know, that's entirely up to you. Nowhere is it stated that you have to do it a certain way. So you don't have to keep it simple and laid back if you don't want to. That's just my approach for the stage of colouring that I'm at. I'm not particularly feeling pushed to do anything too grand at this point in time. It's really all about enjoying it for me. And that just happens to be that enjoyment for me at the moment is keeping it simple. But there may be, you know, I'll come across a page in a book that calls for being very detailed and very polished and, you know, requiring a bit more effort, and it will inspire me to put a lot more into it. And that's okay. At that time I will do that as well. So I think I mentioned it with the talking about using the ink tints in certain ways. Like don't ever pigeonhole yourself that there's only one way to do something or one approach to something. This is grey, by the way, if I hadn't said that. Be wary of pigeonholing yourself, because sometimes we tend to do that, don't we? We say, oh, I only like to use watercolour, and then you suddenly discover a set of pencils that you love, and people were saying, oh, I thought you only liked working with watercolour. So it's all about keeping your options open, and you know, allowing yourself, when that opportunity to try something different comes along, that you try it, but knowing what works for you and reverting to that when you need to work comfortably is a good thing as well. This one is called Outer Space, and it's quite an unusual colour. It's like an extremely dark blue, verging on black. But I like it with the grey sometimes, just to darken some things up. So remember, we're sort of getting things to, you know, a 1/2 to 3/4 way point, and then we'll always come back at the end and, you know, work out just how deep or dark the colours need to be. You're doing that process where you're always leaving yourself open those little options before you bring in the finishing off stuff that then is the point of no return, where you can't burnish any further or you can't add any extra colour. You know, save that right for the end. Okay, and what colour will we put in here, I think? I like the bit of red there. I think we might even do a little bit more of the red. But possibly with a touch of a true red in here as well. So I might do some areas a bit lighter and patchy where the light might catch it. And I'm going to bring in, this is the only thing with the Crayolas, you only get 2 reds. There is red orange and red. That is something that is lacking a little bit. So this is red. I think the orange might clash a little bit with the brick red. And again, you can see that some of these have been used a lot. Partly that is the Crayola, for me personally, tend to work a little bit better when they're very sharp. And so I do sharpen these a lot, and then sometimes I get breakage. So back to the brick red. So we want this to be a little bit deeper and less of the white showing through than what is on the chair there, because this is, I know, you know, to be a solid, hard material, whereas the chair might be, it could be fabric, it could be leather. I've got to, you know, decide how I want to portray that. But we know the side of this is likely to be metal, and it would be a hard shiny surface, so the colour would be very solid and saturated. So before I started colouring today, I was watching Axic Fumbles. Annika has been sharing her book collection with us in various parts, and I'm very jealous of your book collection, Annika. I'd love to come over. I wish I could visit some of you that are overseas and just sit with a cup of tea or coffee and have a look with you through your books, because Annika's got some beautiful books and very eclectic collection. She's got a very individual taste in books, and Annika knows what she likes, and that's what she buys and puts into her collection, which I think is really very admirable. Now the edge of that all still looks like it's metal, so we're going to go back for that light grey to start with. So if you haven't watched Annika, her channel is called Axic Fumbles, and she has been sharing some tutorials of how she does things as well, but at the moment she's sharing her book collection. So if you're interested in seeing some different books, go check her out, because you will see some that you haven't seen anywhere else, and it may have encouraged me to buy a couple of books that I had not seen anywhere before. And in the recent one, Annika talks about, you know, there's a book that she likes that you don't see on Instagram very often, and that we shouldn't just colour for Instagram likes anyway. We should be colouring what makes us happy, and that's so true. It's very easy to get sucked up into the world of Instagram, social media, and sharing your work and wanting feedback, and you know, getting likes and hearing that you're on the right track. But it can be a bit of a slippery slope, because then you start to sometimes make your book choices by what's popular, what you're seeing coloured and what is popular, and we're missing out on so much sometimes when we limit ourselves to that. So I do appreciate you sharing your book collection with us, Annika. It's nice to see some different ones. I'm going to use the grey and start doing this thing in grey too. I can overlay a different colour over it if I want. You know, like eventually we could overlay some of the colours that are surrounding it so that it does look like metal reflections in it. But then again, you know, if you want to keep it simple and you don't want to go to all that trouble, you don't have to either. You can make it as simple or as tricky as you like. Might use some metallic on there. So this is the outer space again. I'm just going to do an outline of that bird, or sorry, the background of that bird on the logo there. So using all the little ideas and tips from what Russell has drawn, look at any cross-hatching or lines that Russell may have drawn in that will help you determine whether something needs a bit of a shadow on it or whether it might be some sort of texture that you can try and explain. Okay, what can we go on to next? Oh, I've missed a little bit there. Sometimes it's so easy to miss these little details. And that would all be part of that thing. Yeah, so... somebody asked me what this was that I was using in another video. It's a little battery operated eraser that you put those little erasers in, and this one was actually very cheap on Temu because I have a habit of keep dropping these. I've had several Derwent ones and more expensive brands, and I keep dropping them and breaking them, which is very annoying. Being plastic, once that, you know, the back breaks on them or something, the batteries won't stay in, and it's all very annoying. Now that's a little footrest there. I'm going to do it the same colour as the chair. This is the brick red, because that's like a footrest that matches the chair, a bit like a dentist chair. So I'm just going to put a little bit of colour on there for starters. I can come back and put all the details in that later. And this sidecar here, I'm thinking I might do that in the brighter red as well. Actually, I could do that off camera maybe and come back, we'll see. So I might start doing some of these little characters. How long have we been at it now? 45 minutes, okay. I'm keeping an eye on the time because I'm using grey here. I found that with the extra long videos, it's been a bit tricky uploading them, and that sadly I might have to be uploading in parts because it just takes too long, and then I get into issues, and then I've been at it for hours, and then I get a message saying upload has failed. Outer space, this is again. I'm going to do the shoes of this character here. Actually, looking at that now, that should be a fox, shouldn't it? I didn't look at the tail. I think it's a fox, is it? Yeah, we'll do it as a fox. So let's use the medium deep golden. And I'm just going to erase that. And that's the beauty of using a light layer for your first layer. It means that you have the opportunity to be able to erase some of it again. So let's go for the medium deep golden. To start with. And it's okay with that soft grey anyway, because it's a bit like an underpainting. Has he got trousers? No, he's not got trousers on, has he? So it's like he's got a jacket on but no trousers. So looking now for a bit more of an orangey fox colour. No, that's not what I want. These are all very brown. Let's see what the deep almond looks like. It's a bit more brown. That's okay for in the areas where we want a bit darker and a bit of definition. I sometimes find when people are drawing animals that are whimsical and cute, like this one, I think, could he be a badger? Or is he a fox? With the tail, I'm not, 100% sure on my animals sometimes. So that one was deep almond that I used for a bit of shading there. And now to sort of make him a little bit brighter, I'm going to bring in a bit of an orangey colour. So I might actually go for orange. A very sharp point on this one. I used a, I think it was a Derwent sharpener, which I can't put my hands on. I've got no idea where I've stored that away. And it creates a really, really long, fine point, which I'm at danger of snapping if I press too hard. Sometimes you can use things like that as a little tool, so the fact that it is such a long, thin point reminds me not to press too hard. Okay, so that was orange, and now I'm going to go back to the medium deep golden and just tone that orange back down again. So you can see by layering, I've been able to achieve a bit of a colour that wasn't there available in the set to me. And that's another thing, about cheap materials or budget materials sometimes, is that not having 200 or 500 pencils means that you need to think outside the box a little bit sometimes and work out how to create the true colour that you need. I get a bit lazy. The more colours that I've got in a set, the more lazy my colouring becomes. And sometimes with those sets, I found that they're so similar anyway, the colours. I'm going to use dark brown here now just to go underneath the jacket and behind this mouse here. And then the legs would be a little bit shaded. You can see there that Russell's put a couple of little lines there. The back of his ear and so on, under the hat, and I have gone over the edge of the hat there. So I'm just using a fan brush again to get rid of that eraser and pencil crumbs, trying to get into good habits again. I do get lazy and use my hand and then end up smudging, so okay, that's enough on him for now for that. I'll do his jacket next. So I think, what will I use here? See, I think the centre of attention today is not Mr Fogherty but his contraption, so that the red draws your eye to it. So if we keep these characters a bit more subdued, your eye will be drawn to his contraption. So maybe we'll go for some dark blue, and we can use that outer space to do some shading with it as well, maybe. So let's go with navy blue. And my temptation is always when there is stripes like this to do alternate stripes in different colours. I might do it with him, but maybe not with him because that's a much bigger character there. So we might do it with this guy. It's really funny, the little ideas that you get stuck with in your head. You know, like for me, it's fish should be orange and, you know, dragons should be green and snail should be a certain colour and so on. And then when I see these patterns, I feel like I have to colour every element of the pattern rather than going over the top of it, and I don't have to do that at all, but it's just a little foible I've got. So I'm going to do his bowler hat in the same colour, and this is just navy blue that I'm using here. And then I want a lighter blue to do the stripe, or a less obvious blue. I'm going to use Wild Blue Yonder. This is very grey, more like a grey than a blue, but that's nice and subtle, so he's not going to detract from the tie machine too much. And I might put some of that into the bowler hat as well. Bit of lighter colour, and then we can build up some shape in that. Maybe do his band there the same colour. And then the outer space, I'm going to use like a shadow. So these are all suggestions that I'm making here. If you want to make your page a little bit of a story, you know, so for example, when I'm talking about drawing your eye in and making this the focal point, you're telling a little bit of a story, that this is something really important and that's what all these characters are looking at and so on. If you don't want to go to that trouble and you just want to do some block colouring or flat colouring or do it however you want, that's entirely up to you, and it's perfectly legitimate to do that as well. Don't ever feel pressured that you need to get all technical and, you know, to the same extent. This is just an option. No, it's always just an option. So let's go for the navy on, would be the collar of the jacket, I'm thinking. And then he could have a white shirt, so, you know, that's the collar of his shirt underneath his jacket. Very dapper jacket considering he's got no pants on. And his bow tie there, we might use the maroon. So it's, you know, same colour but much more subdued than the time machine. Because we don't really want to draw attention to these guys. They're just the supporting story. So the mouse next to him, I think that I will use the maroon for that as the base. And instead of those lighter red colours with it, we'll go for something a bit darker. So red violet. Just so that it's not all one solid colour. So that sleeve there, we'll do a little bit of the red violet on there. And again, I'm just using that little light touch along that arm so that it's not going to fade into the background here with the rest of the coat. And then I might use the dark brown. Just to put in any shadowed area or start to define the shape. And now I am burnishing this a lot heavier because I'm pretty certain now that that's what I'll leave that coat as. Okay, now his hat, I think we'll go back to a standard sort of dark brown hat, a bit like Mr Fogherty's. So what I'm doing to describe the shape of the hat is I'm going darker on these outer edges and then lightening it up as I come to the middle and leaving a very faint highlighted bit in the middle. And now I'm using the outer space just to create a bit of a extra dark edge. And I'll use that outer space as the rim. Not sure what colour mouse he's going to be yet, so we'll let that go for now. He may stay as a white mouse, I don't know. And just use the dark brown on his trousers. Very lightly on the cuff, and then I'm going to darken that area that looks like the coat would be casting a shadow onto there, leaving the cuff quite light. And then that outer space is going to be his shoes. And his tail, I'm going to use the grey Timberwolf. For now. And he's going to be drinking some red wine, so let's use the maroon just to put a little bit of colour into his glass there. The same with Mole. I think he can be drinking a red wine as well. Now this guy here, I'm going to go back to the blues. And I'm just thinking that orange, I need to leave that out. If I'm going to list your colours for you later, I need to remember what I've used. So this guy here, we're going to go back to the navy blue. And we'll use the wild blue yonder for the highlights. So I'm just going to put a bit of that wild blue yonder to remind me that I want to highlight here. That arm's going to be very dark, and under that arm will be dark. And the smaller the figures are, the less I tend to worry too much about the light and shade and everything, because it gets harder the smaller they are. So there'd be dark a bit under his belt. And then on his back here, I'm leaving a very light highlight along the edge of that back so that you can tell the difference between his back and the sleeve that's behind it. And his collar there. And then we'll go back to the wild blue yonder and start to blend that together again. So navy blue on the edges towards the middle, fading into the middle, and under, you know, areas like the arm, or would be in shadow. We want all of that to be nice and deep, and lightening off into the middle of his back here, and then the tail bit of his coat. So I might show you that up close now while I think about it. So you can see I haven't been perfect about how I've done it, but I've left a really faint highlight there, just so that you can tell that that's the edge of his back, and then it's darker here on that arm. Same with a light bit on the sleeve and a dark bit there. So this is telling you that this bit is forward and that bit is behind it, and just gives you a bit of an idea of his shape. And the same with the tail here. Now it's not perfect. I'll keep working on that as I go. You know, it will get more finely blended as I go along, but that's how rough I leave it, you know, while I'm working on it. And then that colour called Outer Space, we'll maybe do his belt in that, and I'll just do that all solid. And his shoes again. He looks like he's got a different toe bit there, but I'm going to do all that one colour. And then the wild blue yonder, I'm just going to do his trouser legs in that colour, and then leave that stripe white, as if he's got the white stripe along the back of his, side of his trouser leg. And I'm just going to do that as his foot. And then I've got the navy blue here that I'm just going to do a hint of a shadow, and that will do for now. So these things on his shoulder, are they epaulets? Is that what they're called? I'll use gold and yellow for that. tiny little bit, and I'll just do that on some of the cheese as well. And I'll leave that out in case I want to use it anywhere else. I could put a little bit of that into this fox fellow over here. Okay, so that's those. And now Mole. What are we going to do, Mole? Mole will be quite a dark colour in himself. So maybe his coat can be a little bit lighter. We might make it a bit more like Mr Fogherty himself. So I'll start with the lighter colour, which is jade green, but I will be building that up to become a darker green. Because I don't want Mole to stand out as being the star of the show, because he's vibrant compared to everybody else. But I do need to build that colour up. So start with that jade green. Then this is the olive. So again, any area where you think it might be overlapping, you always do the darker colour on the bit that is underneath or behind. And we want to show that Mole is a very rotund, round character here, so we want to round out his back a bit. Again, just leaving that light highlight along the bottom of the sleeve there, so that the darkness of his coat underneath here, we're not going to lose all the details there. So sometimes with these characters, I want them to look a little bit like they've got that faded finery. So they've got nice clothes on, but they're a little bit faded and past their prime. So I like them to get that sort of dusty, worn look about them sometimes. Now, instead of that, do I want that same green? Because I don't want him to look exactly like Mr Fogherty. But we are lacking some of the deeper greens in this particular set. So what I might do is use the outer space and start to darken up some areas with the outer space. Because I don't really want him to be the same colour as Mr Fogherty. I want the same colours to be there, but I don't want you to sort of, you know, your eyes to necessarily jump to one to the other. Oops, that was a bit random, wasn't it? Hand slipping there. So I use, you know, cross hatching to build up some of the colour sometimes. Let's go back to the olive. And there's a few lines there that just sort of describe the back of the shoulder for you. And I just want to use some solvent here, and I want to just point something out to you. I did talk about this low toxic solvent by Langridge in the polychromos video that I did for the second page, and how I put it into this old colourless blender alcohol one. Something that somebody said in a comment, Charlotte said that she can't use, you know, anything chemical because of allergies. Just because it's a low toxic solvent doesn't mean that you shouldn't take the usual precautions when using these sorts of things, because the smell isn't really obvious with this one, but it is a solvent, so you should use it in a room that's well ventilated and in small amounts. You know, don't be spending too much time hunched over solvent. So I forgot to mention that in the video when I was talking about how I use this. So thank you for pointing that out to me, Charlotte. I really did forget to mention that. It's important that you know, you take precautions with those sorts of things. So you can use your colourless blenders. Prismacolor make one, so do Derwent, Caran d'Ache, I think Lyra. There's several companies make these colourless blender pencils, and they all work slightly differently. The Prismacolor one's got quite a different consistency to it to other brands that I've tried, so you can use these with Crayola as well. So experiment and find which one you like the most. And I'm just going to grab something. So this is the paper stumps that you can get, come in all different shapes and sizes. Now I believe these are called a torsion. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, but it's spelt Tortillon, I think. Basically it is rolled paper. It's what this is made of, and if you want to, you can use, make sure it's clean before you use it, but you can use these over pencils to blend colour like that, and it will just soften the pencil marks and pencil lines. So that's one way that you can use them. I do have somewhere, see if I can find it. These things are never to hand when you want them, but you can get, it's a long, narrow shape, and it's sheets of very, very fine sandpaper. And when these get really dirty, you can rub them against the sandpaper and it cleans off that stump. Or you can get them quite cheaply by brands like Montmartre. Here's one to just show you, and there's the spelling of it. So Tortillon, sorry. And I was told torsion, but I'm not sure if that's correct. And you can see there that it's rolled paper. This one is a very solid, more expensive one. This is a cheap one. But you can get them in different shapes and sizes for using for blending. I've used them in the past with dry pastel, you know, the chalk pastel. But you can, use a bit of sandpaper to clean those off. But you can also use them dipped into a solvent and used as a blender as well. And you can see here that I've even used Q-tips or cotton buds. And again, they can be used on their own like that to blend. And you'll see it's picked up some colour. So you can blend with just your humble old cotton bud. It's not as effective as some of these other means, but in a pinch you can do it. And you can also dip those into a solvent blend and then use them to blend coloured pencil as well. So there's many different ways to blend coloured pencil, ranging from very cheap, you know, your cotton bud, through to buying colourless blender pencils or solvents. I don't have a price tag on this one. I can't remember what that cost me, but there's many different ways that you can blend pencil, or you can teach yourself. See, that's working nicely with the Crayola, or you can just teach yourself colour pencil techniques of layering and using lighter colours to burnish as well. So there's many different options, but yes, do be aware that when you're using anything that has some sort of solvent, it is best to make sure that you are in a very well ventilated space, and be conscious of that. If you have problems with other things, alcohol markers or anything else that's got those quite strong smells and so on, you may be best to steer clear of solvents completely. So because Mole is dark coloured, I was going to give him dark trousers, but I don't think I will. I'll give him, I'll use the medium dark golden because he will be dark. So I want it to look like he has actually got some trousers on. If we did it in a dark colour, it might just look like this fellow over here who's not got any pants on. So that's the medium deep golden. And then I'll use the dark brown just to start getting in that other shape and shadow. And then let's go for the cocoa. Because Mole will be quite dark in himself, in his head there, and his hands. So, well, actually, I think they've got light coloured hands, well, feet. Don't think moles actually have hands, do they? Alright, medium deep golden again, just to finish off here. And we'll make it look like he's got dark feet, so we'll use the outer space. And then we'll start building up his colour. This is dark brown. I think he'll have a little bit of a highlight at the top and towards the middle at the top of his head. Becoming darker as we come down the back of his head to his collar here. Starting to get deeper, harder pressure there. And I'm going to use the outer space to get a bit darker. And then come back with the dark brown again. So that outer space is just helping to darken the brown, but adding that little bit of extra colour in there just gives it a little bit of interest. And then that bit that's a bit lighter on the top, we'll use the cocoa. Then I'm going to use the cocoa really lightly on his hand, for want of a better word, and his snout there, and then we'll use the medium deep golden. And then to blend all that together just for something different, let's use the colourless blender pencil, and I'm just rubbing off any dark colour that was there from the jacket where I used it. And when I use these different blender products, I quite often find, because it tends to lift a little bit of it off, it lightens the whole thing off a little bit. So I might just add a little bit extra dark brown back on there again. But it just helps to blend those colours together without any harsh lines. But just be aware that it does in fact take a little bit of colour off. And that will probably be enough on him for now. As we get towards the end, we'll make sure that all the details are finished up. And then the last little guy here, what are we at? Oh, we're at an hour and a half. So I might have to stop here and come back with part 2.